Thanks for listening to the Media People Podcast, lively and insightful chats with the people who power the media industry. I'm your host, Victor Genova. For more episodes, you can go to soundcloud.com/mediapeoplepodcast, or you can subscribe on your favorite podcast service like Apple Podcasts or CastBox. Views expressed by participants are personal. Starting a website might be easy, but finding success in today's digital publishing world is extremely difficult. Both audiences and advertising dollars tend to be concentrated between a few popular platforms, with the rest of the internet duking it out for the leftovers. But that wasn't a deterrent for today's guest, Manny Bahia. Manny is the co-founder and chief revenue officer for Daily Hive, a news, information, and entertainment site servicing millennial audiences through localized editions in select Canadian and U.S. cities. Originally a computer science major, Manny shifted to business after taking a microeconomics elective in his first year. It was during his time in university that he co-founded the website Vancity Buzz. Vancity Buzz would later be renamed Daily Hive as part of a national expansion strategy into Toronto and Montreal. Expansion into Calgary and Edmonton followed, and just recently, Daily Hive has gone international, adding Portland and Seattle to the family. Manny Bahia talks to us about growing up in Vancouver, what he learned about business from delivering pizza, and shares with us the journey from growing Vancity Buzz into Daily Hive.
Daily Hive is a hyperlocal Canadian online publication, and my role as the Chief Revenue Officer, I'm the money guy.
You're the money guy.
Essentially, yeah. Anything related to the money coming in and monetizing our eyeballs and the traffic, that's me.
Let's go back to the beginning. Where are you from?
Born and raised in Southeast Vancouver.
Southeast Vancouver. You have an interesting way of describing life growing up in Southeast Vancouver. You've described it as fun, gritty, gang violence. I couldn't believe I was reading that. Let's start first with fun. What was fun about it?
It was cool. I felt like I had a really normal childhood, a fun childhood, growing up, playing outside, just doing regular kid things, playing video games as well. It's good times.
What made it so gritty, though?
Gritty because it had a little edge to it. It was a part of Vancouver that was middle class, but definitely more of a diverse population, and had grit to it, where the birthplace kind of South Asian gangs in Canada. Back then, there was a lot of gang activity and violence, and so it allowed some of the outlying areas to be more gritty as well.
You don't hear that much about Vancouver and gang violence and things like that. All you ever hear about is rising real estate prices, and it's usually one of the most livable cities in the world. Usually, I don't know who puts it out. I think it's The Economist, but usually they're duking it out with Vienna or Stockholm for the most livable city. So those are interesting ways to describe it. I guess when you look at kind of one of those reports about how livable Vancouver is, as a Vancouverite and a native of the city, you probably look at that a little bit differently, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, Vancouver's an extremely safe city, but any city in the world is never going to show its ugly sides. And we've seen that as well. Growing up in Vancouver, we have the Main and Hastings area, for example. Celebrities, when they come to town, and Vancouver being Hollywood North, if they ever drive through that, they're shocked. And it's like, you see all this drug infestation and homelessness, and people wonder, like, how is this happening in Canada? But I mean, there's a story around that as well and why that happens.
You moved around once, though, but you stayed in Vancouver. You described it as, one city, two homes. When you moved into that second home, or I guess out of the original neighborhood, things changed much for you, or it was more or less the same Vancouver that you had known? Vancouver's
a pretty compact city, so it's more or less the same. You can say it's diverse, but essentially it's really just a few ethnicities. But more or less the same. I mean, the mountains are everywhere.
But sports outdoors, speaking of mountains, that was one of your interests growing up. Big skier?
Skiing, snowboarding, hiking. That's just natural. Just the landscape and the environment just forces you to be outdoors.
But not only sports, though. You've credited video games as being a big part of your childhood. Video games are kind of all the rage right now, gaming and esports. Still part of what you do?
I mean, I wish esports was around back when we felt we were competitively playing versus each other.
Oh, we were just playing with expensive toys. They told us it would rot our brains, our parents, and we would never make anything of ourselves. Now you've got 20-year-olds raking in millions a year playing Fortnite.
Right, it's big business now. And video games, I mean, it teaches you a lot of things as well. There was strategy involved, problem solving. I mean, to the point where you're not too addicted, and that's all you're doing, and you get lazy. But it's more of just a fun thing and a social thing to do as well, and just compete versus your friends.
For our generation, nostalgia is a big thing. Is there a classic video game that just kind of tugs on your heartstrings, like you just have to play it if it's around?
I'm a big Zelda guy.
Oh, you're a Zelda guy.
Yeah. I love, I started with A Link to the Past, which I believe was kind of the foundation and the blueprint for future Zelda games as well. I find that to be one of the best games of all time.
Did you blow through all the Zelda games, like everything from like Nintendo, Super Nintendo, right on, or was there a part where you kind of fell off?
Oh, yeah. I've blown through all of them. Yeah.
You credit Michael Jordan as one of your childhood influences. Why him?
He's the best. He's the GOAT. That tenacity that he brings. He's an assassin. He's focused and laser focused on one thing, and that's winning. And he'll do whatever it takes to make that happen. There's no other individual I've seen in my lifetime with that type of drive and motivation to just purely win.
You also say the Forbes magazine billionaire list. It's another group that you look up to. Kind of goes back to what you're saying about winning. I mean, if you look at money as an indicator of success, and you being the chief revenue officer of Daily Hive, I guess then looking at the Forbes billionaire list, that's a litmus test for success.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I still remember the first time I got my first Forbes magazine. I was a kid, and looking at the Forbes billionaire list and just thinking to myself, I want to be on there one day. And almost memorizing to a point the rankings and just learning about the different industries and that billionaires were invested in. So it was, it's been something that I look at every year.
Your very first part-time job was?
Pizza delivery.
For what company?
Supreme Pizza. Best pizza in Vancouver.
Best pizza in Vancouver. Is it just kind of like a one-and-done mom and pop shop, or are they a chain?
Yeah, one done mom and pop shop. 4 brothers operate it. They've been told to franchise out and open more locations. The pizza is so good, but they were just happy with having their one location. It's super busy. People in Southeast Van know all about it. Regular customers, loyal customers. You can't beat Supreme Pizza.
So it's basically a South Vancouver institution, and it can't go away.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
What did you learn about yourself while you were delivering pizzas that have helped you with Daily Hive or anything you do in business now?
It came down to customer service and just being efficient. The quicker I worked, the more tips I earned. Also, I learned from the operators of Supreme Pizza as well. They became almost uncles of mine. Learned a lot in terms of their strategy and the hard work that they put in to build a business, and also some of the real estate side of things that they were investing in. I learned a lot there.
What brought you to Kwantlen Polytechnic University, and what did you study there?
Yeah, I went to Kwantlen Polytechnic University at first in my first year, simply because my parents told me I needed to go to university, and I was never a big fan of school, to be honest. I mean, I could get good grades if I wanted to and put work into it. So I went there and I started on computer science my first semester. And it's something I had taken in high school as well, and I was interested in becoming a software engineer. But I quickly learned that I just can't be that guy that can be on the computer all day. I need to be running around and socializing. One of the electives I first took was microeconomics, and then I just fell in love with business. I just found it more challenging, more of a new frontier, very limitless. And just having that social aspect as well, branching off of economics and understanding of the macro and micro economies, and building your own business. I mean, I think I just have that entrepreneur personality.
After 1 year, though, you moved to Simon Fraser University. What was the change, and did you change your major as well?
Yeah, I continued with business after I switched majors at Kwantlen quite quickly, and I did a joint major with economics. It's truly something that I love.
While in university, though, you started Daily Hive in your final year. Where did the idea come from, and what problem did you think that Daily Hive could solve for people?
So Carm and I were childhood friends. I've known him since I was 5 years old. We grew up in Southeast Van, a couple doors down, and we started as a passion project and a hobby. We named it Vancity Buzz to begin with.
I remember the Vancity Buzz name.
It was more opinion-based and about topics that we knew how to write about them. So things like real estate, things like sports, things to do, cool Vancouverites doing cool things. We just wanted to be a resource for Vancouverites that they can call their own.
Vancity Buzz branched out into other cities, and at this point you realized you couldn't call it Vancity Buzz in other cities. So why the name Daily Hive when you started expanding eastwards?
Yeah, Vancity Buzz had developed and built quite a bit of brand equity, but really it came down to the business side of things. And for us to expand across Canada, having different names and different domains in each city would become quite expensive, frankly. So best way to scale would be to have one uniform name to scale our marketing, admin, and personnel costs throughout the organization, any sort of overhead, even offices. So it made sense to go with Daily Hive, and even from a technical point of view as well, to build up SEO for every new domain. It takes a long time. So yeah, we had a short-term drop in terms of our SEO as well, switching domains, but in the long run, it was for the best.
You started Vancity Buzz with your business partner at a time when getting into publishing or even online publishing altogether was going to be difficult. I mean, a lot of sites were out there. We're starting to see a lot of ad revenue kind of come down, but you guys jumped headfirst into a segment that a lot of people were pulling back on. Was that ever at the front of your mind, or were you just focused on delivering the best product possible?
We were focused on developing the best product possible. For us, what we learned was content is king. And we saw the projections of digital advertising spending that was going to eclipse traditional advertising spending. And we were just patient. We were just like, build your user base, build our army. That's our customer lifetime value. And eventually the dollars will come. You see this with other tech companies as well. You see Instagram, for example, who had whatever it was, 100 million plus followers and users, has $0 in revenue, had a dozen employees, sold for over $1 billion. It really is just about the eyeballs and the attention that you capture of people, and now more and more the data that you capture. And it's easy to monetize that after.
Many online news organizations employ a national strategy. I mean, mass appeal equals larger audience, which in turn should be more attractive to advertisers. You chose to start local. Why that way? And you even still keeping it local as you're branching out into other cities.
National is overdone. I feel it's lazy. That being said, focusing on hyperlocal, we're still able to capture the national audience with specific stories that affect all Canadians. So hyperlocal helps us to really allow people to connect to their city and provide relevant and compelling content. You can't really learn from a national source of a cool new restaurant that just opened up, or a concept, a festival that's happening, and the various sponsors and different arts events, or a Drake sighting, or whatever it is. You're not going to get that from a national news source, but that's very popular on a hyperlocal level. And again, that being said as well, doesn't prevent us from attracting national advertisers. Actually, is a strength of ours to be able to cater to local audiences, even with a national campaign, being able to change up our content or our titles to better attract those local readers. For example, if we have a campaign running about a tech company that's based in Edmonton, Edmonton is obviously going to feel really proud with a title saying, an Edmonton-based company has raised X millions of dollars, has these many employees. Whereas in the other cities, we can angle it as a Canadian tech company. So either way, we win.
Let's go back to the very first day that Vancity Buzz goes live. The very first article that people are going to come across when they find the site. Do you remember what that article was about?
Behold, this is Vancity Buzz.
It was just an introduction then to everyone.
Basically, it was just, hey, this is Vancity Buzz. These are the topics we're going to cover. We're proud Vancouverites, and we're happy to be providing this resource. Just check us out and watch out for us.
Do you personally have any mentors that you and your business partner lean on?
Not really, but I think throughout the years, you learn so much from other individuals, whether they be in your industry or not, whether they're entrepreneurs or whether they're even employees, and some of the skills and the knowledge base that they bring. I think you just kind of learn from everybody around you. I mean, it sure does help for sure to interact with other entrepreneurs from time to time, those that have made it further to the goal that you want to reach. But I wouldn't say that there's any mentor or mentors that we, fall back on, and we never want to become dependent as well, where we continue to seek advice from individuals that affects our decision making, or that is kind of what we rely upon. I think Mark Cuban mentioned that in one of his interviews as well, and that really clicked. I was like, oh wow, he doesn't have any mentors, and I can't say that we have any mentors either.
It's interesting you bring that up, because I've had that discussion with others too, is that if you approach someone and say, will you be my mentor, automatically it changes the dynamic of the relationship. They might treat you like you're always looking to learn, even though you might not be. So you employ something that I like to call passive mentorship. You just find people with stories out there that are interesting, that might be relevant to your experience, and you gravitate towards them and you learn from that without having to pick up the phone and ask anyone.
Right, absolutely. And I get youth reaching out to me from time to time as well, from my neighborhood, my community, as well, asking for advice or just want to get in touch and just want to learn the story. And I'm happy to help. I think it's just something, you learn, but you also need to give. It's very important. And they say, to master, you need to teach.
That brings up an interesting point. Philanthropy is a big part of Daily Hive. What are you guys doing in the community right now to give back?
Yeah, so the business is really built upon, again, connecting people to their city. So us having community partnerships is a very important, vital way, not only to provide value to the cities that we're in, but also gain that organic and positive affinity towards the brand. Us supporting community groups and nonprofits in the cities that we're in, we've provided, I can't even measure, X millions of dollars in value in marketing services to promote, fundraising efforts or, marathons or different festivals that, improve the vibrancy of a city. All these things are important for the fabrics of each city, for it to be whole.
So you're literally utilizing the audience that you have for charitable causes or not-for-profits then, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Going back to your days in university, though, you and your business partner, you have the idea for Daily Hive. Obviously, it needs money coming off the ground. Most people would be thinking about how to pitch investors, but you guys didn't do that. You pulled your money together and you started it without investment seed, correct?
Correct. We pooled a whole $5 together to pay for our hosting costs for the first month. That's about it. And actually, we started free on Blogspot. And then when we shifted over to our own domain, I remember, I think it was Bluehost or something, and that was a server, and it was $5 a month. And we had our first advertiser who paid us $75 a month. It was a banner ad on the front page, our homepage, and we were profitable since day one. You can say that we had pretty high margins there, eh?
So who was your first client then? Who was giving you that $75?
So actually, interestingly enough, we had our first client, then we had our first paying client. Our first client was an ad that we put up of this coffee chain in Vancouver. The reason we did that was to show that we did have advertisers, which we didn't, to attract other advertisers to advertise with us and with a reputable brand as well. So our first paying advertiser was actually the Bachelor Plan. And what they do is they organize bachelor parties for people.
And then that's a local Vancouver company, along with the coffee house you mentioned. So when people come to the site, they know that you're legit from Vancouver, because no one from outside of Vancouver would be familiar with those two companies.
Absolutely, they're Vancouver companies, and no one else would have known. And I don't know if the Bachelor Plan is around anymore. I hope they're doing well. Thanks for being the first advertiser.
Okay, so we know that you started in Vancouver. What other cities has Daily Hive expanded to in Canada?
Yeah, so our first expansion was Calgary, and thereafter we did Toronto and Montreal at the same time. We recently just expanded to Edmonton as of October 2019, and we just recently, as of a couple of weeks ago, expanded to Seattle and Portland, our first international expansion. So that'll be interesting for sure. It's always something that you learn from each expansion and you get better at it. But this is our first international expansion, so we're interested to see what we learn from that.
Interesting that you talk about the cities that you expanded to in the United States, because most people would have thought, okay, if you're going into the U.S., you think L.A. and New York City, but you guys picked Portland and Seattle. Why those two cities?
It just makes sense with our headquarters being in Vancouver and the culture being so similar, us having a dominant presence in Vancouver, and the initiative by the provinces and the states to increase the collaboration between the Cascadia corridor. So it just makes sense to be able to operate out of Vancouver with the culture being so similar. And that's important for us to know. Any city that we expand to is how to speak to our audience and to be authentic, to be able to speak with different diverse set of lenses that actually make up the city as well. You hear politicians a lot of times talk about how diversity is a strength, but I mean, what does that really mean? For us in our business, what that means is that that diverse makeup that is of a city should be provided by a diverse set of journalists.
Each market you operate in requires a certain level of learning in order to adapt to the local content tastes. Was there a particular market that took a little bit of time for Daily Hive to adapt to?
I think our first expansion to Calgary was difficult, simply being because it was our first expansion. It wasn't as easy as us just walking in and just taking over. It took a few years. Having learned, and in hindsight, we could have moved things along quicker. I'd say a difficult market is probably Montreal right now, just because of obviously the two official languages and being able to cater to audiences on both sides. So yeah, I mean, each city comes with a set of challenges. I mean, for example, like Toronto is just huge. It's a massive market. There's a lot of competition. It's the epicenter of Canadian media.
It's where most of the advertising dollars are spent.
Yeah, and that's why I'm here as the Chief Revenue Officer, as the money guy, because the national brands and agencies are located in Toronto. This is where, I mean, it's a global city. There's no better time right now to be in Toronto than right now, and everything that's burgeoning and just happening right now.
I'm going to close with a couple of rapid-fire questions. Biggest milestone for Daily Hive to date?
Reaching 10 years last year was huge, because if you look at the stats, maybe a third, if not even reached that milestone of companies, yeah.
And how many unique people visit the Daily Hive globally every month?
So we do about 5 million unique visitors per month, and of course that's growing.
Your favorite movie?
Gone in 60 Seconds.
The old or the new one?
There's a new one?
Oh, you're learning. Oh, you just learned about the classic the first time. There was one they did in the 60s.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
well, I thought the one I watched was the old one.
No, the Nicolas Cage one is a remake. There's an original Eleanor. If you can find it, I recommend it, simply because they did not have the cash. This is a real fun startup story. In the 60s, they did not have the cash to pay for permits to block off the streets. So what they would literally do is for the chase scene, so they'd send a crew ahead, stop traffic, get the camera guy set up, they'd blow past the intersection, everyone get in the car, go to the next one and do that. And they filmed it in pieces.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Actually, I'd love to share a startup story of ours. So one of the things that we used to do in terms of our guerrilla marketing efforts was that we would go to a Best Buy or a Future Shop back then and load up all the screens with Vancity Buzz. And so any passersby would see it and start developing that brand recognition.
So you literally went from every laptop, computer, dailyhive.com, next.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not going to lie, I just did that the other day at the Samsung store at the Eden Center. Daily Hive on all the tablets.
Your favorite book?
Outliers, but also, Rich Dad Poor Dad, just because it's the foundation really of learnings of financial literacy.
Your favorite song?
Put On by Jeezy featuring Kanye.
Why that song?
Because we're hyper local and we put on for every city that we're in.
Without hesitation. I love it. If you go back in time and give your younger self advice, what would you say?
Enjoy the journey, because it's the sweetest part.
That's a good way of looking at it. A lot of people have got specific advice that they give themselves, but you wouldn't change a thing. Whatever happened, if it made you happy or sad or angry, whatever, to you, you see it as all part of the journey.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, as you get older as well, you learn how much adversity and your past shapes you to who you are today. And if you're happy with who you are today and you're grateful for everything you have, then why change a thing?
My signature closing question: if you weren't in media, what would you be doing and why?
I mean, the path was actually at one point as I was doing my degree to go into investment banking. So I would be in New York at a bank or something. And then I guess that, having the entrepreneurial itch, doing my own thing somehow, somewhere, have my own shop maybe. I don't know. But the path was to investment banking. And I guess thank God for the Great Recession. And
I'm glad someone found something good out of it.
Yeah. And then just us focusing on the media business, and Daily Hive, and here we are today.
So instead of taking companies public, here you are dropping knowledge for the public.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Manny, thank you so much. This has been a great chat. Appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Victor.
That's it for today's show. For more episodes, you can go to soundcloud.com/mediapeoplepodcast or subscribe on your favorite podcast service like Apple Podcasts or CastBox. And don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Vic Genova.